So I have a question. Do you remember waking up this morning? It wasn't that long ago, right? Mm-hmm. Do you remember? Did you have an alarm set? Did you just wake up naturally? Did you reach over and hit the snooze? Did you lay there in the stillness and just think for a little bit? Did you jump right out of bed, feet on the floor and ready for the day? We all do it differently, don't we? We awaken in the mornings, and that's one of those transitions and transformations that we experience in our life. Transitioning from being a person who's asleep to being a person who's awake. It's a little transition time in there. It's just like suddenly we're awake. And that's what we're talking about this month. We're talking about spring into transformation and prosperity. Spring into transformation and prosperity as we continue our annual theme this year, which is Your Prosperous Life. And we're looking at prosperity in all areas of our life for the entire year. And we're basing our definition of prosperity on the one that we learned from Edwene Gaines last October in our previous prosperity series that we did. And she defines it as a vitally alive physical body, relationships that are satisfying, work that we love, and all of the money that we can spend. So prosperity is a mindset. It's a place that we come from and how we view life. So we're looking at that in all areas of our life. And today, as we are celebrating the ancient tradition of Easter with our Christian brothers and sisters and our 3rd year anniversary, yay, I'm excited to step into the theme of transformation for our entire month. And also my talk today is called Rise and Shine. Rise and Shine. So I believe that the great message of the ministry of the Rabbi Jesus was to awaken our own divinity. It seems to be what he was trying to teach people through his stories and his parables and so forth, was awaken to your own divinity. And he said things like, God is within each of us. The Father is within. It is not me that does the work. It is the Father within that does the work. He said things like, all of these things that I will do, you can do and more. You can do and do more. He also said, love one another. Love one another. And I find that the story of death and resurrection, his and many others, because there's a multitude of those stories throughout history of death and resurrection. And I think they last because they're archetypal stories in our lives. They represent that way that we transition from winter to springtime, from the dormancy of the dark and the colder days of winter into the light and the more sun, and things are blooming and so forth in the spring. If you think way back to our way old ancestors, winters were very, very hard. They didn't have electric heat. They didn't have grocery stores. And there wasn't a lot of food and a lot of heat. And it was dark. So they really welcomed this springtime energy of greater light and growing and more food and abundance and availability to them. So it's something that I think resonates deep within our souls about this light, this illumination of spring returning. And it's also a time of dying to the old and awakening and being reborn in the new. I know I see that in classes sometimes when somebody gets a principle for the first time and they fall away from the way they had been thinking and they start to see things in a new light. It's almost like a light bulb. Their entire aura changes and shifts in that aha moment. We've all had those at some point in our life where we understand a new concept, a new idea. And that's the idea of awakening to the new thought, being reborn into new thought. So today what I'd like to do for our talk is to look at what I think are these 3 very empowering messages of Jesus' ministry and how and if they are still transforming ideas for us today. So the first one is God is within us all. No exceptions. Not everybody but him or her or those people, right? Everybody. God is within all. In the beginning, love created the heavens and the earth. substituting that word love for the word God gives much richer meaning to a lot of the phrases and verses and things in the Bible in particular, but in many of our teachings, simply because some of us are charged by the word God. Anybody still get charged by that? There's some stories attached to that some stories that were interpreted and we were told about in our youth perhaps that scared us. Maybe they harmed us in some way. Lots of stuff, baggage that can be attached to that word. And that's why we say it doesn't matter what word you use. But I find when I use the word love, that it expands that idea for me. It expands that idea for me. So if we are all created of this love, if love created all, and we're all created of that, and we exist, are we not love? If that's the only thing that created everything? Yeah, we are. We are. So if we believe that love is all there is, and there's only one creative source, and whether you believe like Neil deGrasse Tyson teaches, the astrophysicist, he says we're all stardust. Einstein said it's all quantum energy. Religions say that it's God or love. Then again, there's only one. We exist. We are of that. And this is one of the basic premises of the science of mind, isn't it? Ernest Holmes, the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living and the author of the Science of Mind that we teach from, he says the great and only awakening that can ever come to us is when we become aware of the fact that which enables us to think, to be conscious, to be creative, is the mind of God active within us. And this can be one of our most difficult things to practice, can't it? Difficult truths to remember. Because we are individuals. We've shown up on planet Earth as individuals, feeling like we're separate. I'm separate from Penny. I have a different body from Penny, from Joe, from Kathy, from Steve. We're different, so we feel like we're separate. But in fact, we're not. In fact, we're not. What Holmes is describing to us is the spiritual human. And in that spiritual human, that spiritual spirit within us is this thing we call life, isn't it? This thing that we call life is the presence of the divine within each of us, individually expressed. And it's interesting that even science today has a hard time defining what death is. When does it occur? When the brain stops functioning, when the heart stops functioning, when all the cells in the body finally die? They have a hard time defining that, so they have a hard time defining life. What exactly is life? There's not a place in us that this is life. That's it right there. I was leaving my community Friday, and I was driving out, and one of our little bunnies had been run over. Yeah, my first thought was they killed the Easter bunny. My second thought was, wow, there's no life there. The life of that bunny has moved on. The consciousness of that bunny has moved on. This is just a carcass in the road. It's just a carcass that's going to go back into the essence of everything that is, right? But the essence, the life force of that bunny is moved on. And that's the same with us, right? These bodies that we have are bodies. It's not who we are. We are the conscious awareness, the life force within the bodies that we have. We are that life force. And we express individually, which is really the cool thing, as Lori said, like every one of those Easter eggs in that basket are different. Each one of us are different. And that leads me to the next truth that we're talking about, which is these things and more you shall do also. Jesus was a wonderful example of the Christ consciousness that is available in all of us. He really embodied it. And I think that's why they called him Jesus the Christ, is because he embodied this connection with the divine spirit so Well, that he lived it. He lived it. And he told the disciples, it's just not me though. You too can do this. You too can do this. He was evolved consciousness. And we have seen other spiritual leaders such as the Buddha and some of the stories about him that perhaps he also was in that high level of vibration of consciousness. We have talked here before how we are of that divine presence and essence, and therefore we have the same qualities of it. God DNA. And that we are therefore creative because of that. We have the same creative abilities, smaller scale, obviously, but we have that idea of the creativity, and we create, we know, through our thoughts, our beliefs, and our imagination, don't we? Our imagination can be our most powerful faculty in the creative process. Most of the world's faith traditions teach that the visible form comes from the invisible that we cannot see. Comes from the formless into the form. We talk about my beloved music stand here all the time, how it was first an idea in someone's mind before it ever got drawn or manufactured. And I bet each one of us has had a creative experience this week. At least one. I had one on Friday. I lost my debit card. And I realized it last Sunday when we went to brunch. It wasn't where it was supposed to be. So I got home and I poked around and looked, didn't find it. It's like, wonder where it went. And I looked in all the usual places. I tore out all the purses, all the pockets, all those things. I looked in the unusual places, under the car seat, around the office, that sort of thing. Refrigerator. And, it just wasn't turning up. So Friday I decided, well, I better go get another one and let the bank know that my card's been missing for a while. But as I was doing that, I had a thought. And that thought was, where did I use it last? My next thought was, it was in Monterey at my friend Debbie's ordination. Oh, did I leave it in Monterey? And then my next thought was, perhaps it's in with my travel documents. So I then took that inspired action to take those steps to go find those travel documents, and sure enough, there was my debit card. Now, this debit card did not exist for me for 2 weeks. It was gone. As far as I was concerned, I had left it someplace, lost it, whatever. But it was gone. It was not in my reality, right? And then, through the use of the creative process, here it is in form, back in my life. Crazy? That's how it works. That's how the creative process works, how we move from thought to form. It may be a process of rediscovery, but it can also be a process of creation, and we have a very powerful tool in our teaching called affirmative prayer. We have these flyers back there for you, and it goes through what it is. It gives you an outline for how to write your own here on the back, and it gives you our teaching tool, which we'll talk about a little bit later here. But these are available to you. It is a very powerful tool that we have here in our centers that we teach. And that's how we can use this creative process to consciously plant the ideas into this universal presence, thought, mind, and then see that manifested in our lives. We use our teaching symbol from the science of mind to teach that principle, where the top portion is the thought, the middle portion is the soil, and the seed, soil, and plant. It's just a teaching symbol that we use to represent the wholeness of all of life that we all exist within. So it is what Jesus meant, I think, when he said, "You shall do this and more also," is that we have this creative ability within us to be able to design our lives. To be able to design our lives. And the idea that he healed the sick. Do we heal the sick? Yeah, we've advanced pretty well, haven't we? We do some pretty miraculous things in our medical community. Do we fly? Do we walk on water in the form of maybe living on ships? Sure. All of these things you will do and more, because he knew we were an evolving consciousness. He knew we could do more. Ernest Holmes tells us in his beautiful little book, This Thing Called You, he says that you're already a spiritual being. You're already a spiritual being. And then Wayne Dyer came along and said, having a human experience. Remember that? We are human beings spiritual beings having a human experience. Holmes suggested that when we can understand that we are spiritual beings and embody the essence of that, that which we are in the invisible will become more apparent in the visible. That which we are in the invisible, the spiritual self, will become more visible in the world of effects. So our last spiritual truth today is love one another. Love one another. As I've thought about Jesus' ministry, the idea of love one another, and the events that are acknowledged around his life this weekend, I'm finding the story filled with some incongruencies, some paradoxes, maybe some questions, such as the idea of his message, love one another. If you recall the story, he said to his disciples, you will betray me, you will each deny me at some point this evening. And they're like, no, we would never deny, never. And he looks, and Peter's one that's really making a fuss about it, and he goes, Peter, you will deny me 3 times before the rooster cries, dude. Come on. I know these things. He knew Judas would betray him to the guards for 30 pieces of silver, leading to his arrest. He was a smart cookie. He could turn water into wine. I'm still practicing that one. Second, he surely knew, riding into Jerusalem for Passover, that he would be arrested, prosecuted, and die a gruesome death. He probably knew that. But if he knew all this stuff, why did he do it anyway? Why did he do it anyway? Well, the story doesn't tell us that he came back. If you remember the story, after he rose, he came back to the disciples for another 40 days, didn't he? He didn't come back and was all mad and angry. He didn't stop and go, I'm not going to hang out with you guys. You betrayed me. You denied me. I'm not coming back. He didn't do that, did he? He came back and hung out with them for another 40 days and taught them. Love one another as I have loved you. That remained his message, didn't it? That remained his message even in the face of betrayal. Think about us today. If you've got a company and you've got employees and you've got a whistleblower in your company and you go off to jail, are you going to come back and love that person? You might be a little resentful. Or if they betray you in some way, they steal your corporate secrets, something like that, those things we read in the news headlines. Love thy neighbor. Can we love at that deep level? Can we love at that deep level? So as we reflect back on that first truth that we talked about, God is within each of us and that we're all of that same substance and that same essence, this makes sense, doesn't it? To love one another. We're all the same stuff. It makes sense to love one another. Love ourselves is the first key to that, though, isn't it? Because it's real hard to love somebody else when we don't love ourselves. Love ourselves. The other commandment, of course, is love thy neighbor as thyself. So once we love ourselves, then we can love our neighbors, so we can love each other, love our planet and all that it contains. Around here we call that the practice of wholeness, don't we? Living in wholeness, living in unity. Imagine. Use your imagination. Use that imagination faculty right now. Imagine if everybody on the planet simply loved each other. No resentment, no resistance, no anger. We're all working for the common good of humankind, self-actualization, we wouldn't have to work for peace, would we? Because we'd be peace. Yeah. Imagine that world. All we can do is our own individual work, though, isn't it? We can't make somebody love us. We can't change somebody else. We can only do our own work. Science of Mind gets criticized for that a lot because we don't do enough out in the world. But our premise has been, once we love ourselves, then we can shine our light into the world. Then we can shine the light for others. And then that light can begin to be reflected and the whole world becomes a brighter place. But we can't shine a light from a burned out bulb. We've got to be illuminated on the inside, loving ourselves. When we feel safe and secure within our own being. Yeah. So where are you? Where can you be an influence of love in your world? In your family, in your communities, in your business, here in the center? There's lots of opportunity for that, isn't there? A kind word, an open hand, lots of opportunities. So I want to move to practicing our principles today, practicing our principles of transformation. The first one, of course, again, as we said, is God is within us all. And when we can believe this at that really deepest core level, knowing that Spirit is within each of us, those other two become pretty easy. Those other two become pretty easy. And this is the way that our affirmative prayer works. If you're familiar with it, or even if you're not, the first step is to recognize that there's only that one source. And the second step is to unify ourselves in that, recognizing that we are in that one source. And when we get to that place, it's very easy to know our own wholeness or the wholeness of our planet or anybody or anything in it. And the practice of meditation and study are the ways that we open our understanding of the divinity of Spirit and of ourselves. So that's our practice in that. The second is these things and more you shall do also. And this is that creative process that is active within each of us. Many of you I know have had tremendous demonstrations or creations in your life. The lives that you've created sitting here right now today. I know that. We've got a manifested prayer chest back there that I know many of the prayers that have manifested in your lives. You are creative. I don't care what you say. I know you are. So this affirmative prayer is a way that we can creatively participate in that process. It is done unto us as we believe. It's the law of cause and effect in our lives. And learning to apply this 5-step method of affirmative prayer is one of our power tools within our community that we use. It's the difference in using a rock and using a jackhammer. A little more efficient. Affirmative prayer is a very powerful form of prayer that we use in our community. And number 3, love one another. Ernest Holmes again says, if we make ourselves receptive to the idea of love, we become lovable. To the degree that we embody love, we are love. And this is why people who love are loved. You ever notice that? Yeah. It does not pay to hate. Hate is a human idea. Love is a divine truth. Love is a divine truth. And self-love really is the key. And it starts right here, doesn't it? It starts within each one of us. Figuring out how to love ourselves. Love will heal our planet. And the way that we practice this, we got to pay attention to what we're thinking about. That's the first step. And when you catch yourself this week criticizing yourself, that was dumb. Why'd I do that? I can't believe I messed up. You're so bad. You never know what you're doing. Oh my gosh. Anybody have any of those conversations? Once in a while, maybe. If you catch those, lovingly simply say, that's not true. That's not true. What is true is I am wonderful. I'm amazing. I can't believe how well I just did that. I can't believe those beautiful words came out of my mouth. I can't believe I connected so well with that person. I can't believe I returned that phone call so quick, that email so fast. praise and raise yourselves. So on this Easter Sunday, we celebrate spring and the completion of our 3rd year. 3 years as Scottsdale Center for Spiritual Living. It is a time of celebration. It's a time of the returning of the sun and the awakening from the dormancy of winter and the darkness of any tomb of thought that perhaps we have created. It's a time to step out of that thinking and into the light of new thinking for yourselves. Time of transformation. It's a time of recognizing that we are not bound by conditions and effects. This moment in this story happened in consciousness first, and then it was kept alive by stories. So we can die from the old and be born again into our own new thinking and transform our own lives, just like we wake up in the morning, transforming ourselves from being a sleeping person to being a waking person. We can transform our waking state as well. So I want to close today with a final quote from our friend Ernest Holmes from his book, Living the Science of Mind. And he says, "Today is the time in which we should cut loose from the negative threads of previous experiences and deliberately make up our minds that we shall no longer create our future from the old past." Beautiful words. Beautiful words. So resurrect your thoughts today and rise and shine your light. So it is. Would you join me in an affirmative prayer now? How good it is to recognize that there is only one power, one presence in the universe, and that power and that presence is God. It is spirit, it is source, it is life, it is essence, it is presence. It is the universal energy. It is stardust. It is all that exists, has ever existed, and shall ever exist. And all of it is here now, present in this room. It is the very breath that we breathe. It is in, through, and as each one of us as an expression of it, individualized and unique, as only we can express it through our own beingness. And how good it is to know this unity in that wholeness, that place within us that's never been hurt, harmed, scared, frightened. That place within us that is pure love, pure light. So it is from that place that I speak my word for and about each one of us here this day, knowing the absolute truth and wholeness of who and what we have come here to be as these spiritual beings, expressing the divine light that we are, and creating a world that works for all, allowing our light to shine brightly from our hearts, from our minds, from our very souls. And I know as we step forth from any tomb of darkness of thought that we have created, that we too are resurrected and move into the shining light, the light of love, loving ourselves, each other, our neighbors, our planet. And I know for anyone that has anything on their heart this day, that as they lift that into their conscious awareness in this moment, that it is healed, it is made whole, it is made abundant, clarity is revealed, whatever the healing may be, it is open to the full divine expression of light through them now, and I know that it is healed in this moment. So it is with great joy and gratitude that I simply release this into the activity of law, into the action of mind, knowing that it is already done in the invisible realm and that we simply await its manifestation in the visible. And we know, claim, and accept that this moment by saying, and so it is.